I will teach you to be rich. No guilt. No excuses. Just a 6-week program that works, second edition. By Ramit Sethi. Comprehensive summary. Introduction. I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi presents a practical, actionable approach to personal finance that challenges conventional wisdom through a psychology-based methodology focused on automation and behavior change, rather than extreme frugality or complex investment strategies. First published in 2009 and updated in its second edition to reflect technological changes and evolving financial landscapes. The book targets primarily young professionals in their 20s and 30s who recognize the importance of financial management but feel overwhelmed by contradictory advice or guilty about past money mistakes. Sethi argues that personal finance is primarily a behavioral challenge rather than a mathematical one, contending that small, consistent actions aligned with individual values create more sustainable results than either obsessive penny-pinching or sophisticated investment techniques accessible primarily to the wealthy. Through a straightforward 6-week program, he provides a systematic approach to eliminating debt, establishing appropriate saving and investment mechanisms, and creating money machines that generate wealth with minimal ongoing maintenance. For readers paralyzed by financial anxiety or confused by the vast array of contradictory financial advice, I Will Teach You to Be Rich offers both the tactical guidance for immediate implementation and the psychological framework for developing healthy money habits that last a lifetime. The book ultimately presents personal finance not as a path to deprivation or a complex technical domain, but as a practical life skill that, once mastered, creates freedom to focus on what truly matters. Overview of the book. Sethi structures his work around a practical 6-week program that systematically addresses key areas of personal finance, proceeding from foundational elements through increasingly sophisticated applications. The book begins by challenging common money misconceptions and establishing a psychology-based approach emphasizing behavior design over willpower. Week 1 focuses on credit optimization, providing tactical guidance for improving credit scores and selecting appropriate cards. Week 2 addresses banking optimization through fee elimination and account consolidation. Week 3 introduces retirement and investment account establishment, explaining vehicle selection and setup procedures. Week 4 covers the conscious spending plan, Sethi's alternative to traditional budgeting that aligns expenditures with personal values. Week 5 presents automated saving and investment systems that implement the plan with minimal ongoing effort. Week 6 details specific investment approaches, emphasizing low-cost index funds for long-term wealth building. Throughout these sections, Sethi balances conceptual understanding with immediate implementation steps, providing scripts for negotiating with financial institutions, specific account recommendations, and decision frameworks for various financial situations. The book concludes with guidance on major financial decisions, including housing purchases, relationships, and increasing income beyond investment returns. This structure creates both a comprehensive financial education and a step-by-step implementation plan, making complex financial concepts accessible while providing concrete actions readers can take immediately. The second edition updates all recommendations, statistics, and account details while maintaining the fundamental principles and psychology-based approach of the original. Key concepts in I Will Teach You to Be Rich. The psychology of money management, behavior over knowledge. Sethi begins by addressing the fundamental disconnect in personal finance education. The focus on information and calculation while neglecting the psychological and behavioral elements that actually determine financial outcomes. He challenges the conventional assumption that providing people with more financial knowledge automatically improves decision-making, arguing instead that emotions, habits, and cognitive biases often override intellectual understanding of optimal financial practices. Through research citations and case examples, Sethi demonstrates how psychological factors, including loss aversion, present bias, and status anxiety, frequently undermine otherwise intelligent financial plans. He introduces behavioral design principles including automation, decision elimination, and small action commitments as more effective than willpower-dependent approaches. Sethi addresses common psychological barriers, including money avoidance, refusing to engage with finances due to anxiety or shame, false dichotomy thinking, assuming financial responsibility means extreme frugality, and perfectionism paralysis, avoiding action until the perfect plan emerges. He provides specific techniques for overcoming these barriers, including commitment mechanisms, environment design, and strategic incompleteness that prioritizes action over perfect planning. Throughout this discussion, Sethi emphasizes that sustainable financial improvement comes not from mathematical optimization, but from creating systems aligned with human psychology rather than fighting against it. This psychological foundation establishes why Sethi's subsequent tactical recommendations focus on automation and simplification rather than complex investment strategies or extreme budget restrictions, explaining the book's emphasis on systems that work with imperfect human behavior rather than requiring perfect discipline. The conscious spending plan, values-based financial management. Sethi introduces the conscious spending plan as an alternative to traditional budgeting, arguing that conventional approaches focusing on restriction and tracking typically fail because they require constant willpower, create guilt around spending, and ignore individual value differences in consumption preferences. Instead, his system aligns spending with personal priorities by allocating expenses across four major categories: fixed costs, 50 to 60%, investments, 10%, savings, 5 to 10%, and guilt-free spending, 20 to 35%. Within this framework, Sethi emphasizes conscious decision-making about where money goes based on individual values rather than external expectations, spending extravagantly on things you love while cutting costs mercilessly on things you don't. Through contrasting examples, including a food enthusiast who spends significantly on dining experiences while saving on transportation versus a travel enthusiast with opposite priorities, Sethi demonstrates how personalized allocation creates sustainable satisfaction, unlike one-size-fits-all frugality prescriptions. He provides specific implementation guidance, including expense categorization exercises, value priority identification methods, and decision framework for distinguishing between personally meaningful expenditures versus socially influenced consumption. Sethi addresses common implementation challenges, including partner disagreements about priorities, handling irregular expenses, and balancing long-term goals with present enjoyment. Throughout this discussion, Sethi emphasizes that effective financial management requires honesty about what truly brings joy versus what's consumed from habit or social pressure, creating the foundation for spending reductions that feel liberating rather than depriving by aligning financial behavior with authentic personal values rather than external expectations or temporary impulses. Automation, the power of financial infrastructure. Sethi examines how creating automated financial systems eliminates the need for ongoing discipline while ensuring consistent implementation of appropriate saving, investment, and bill payment behaviors. He argues that automation represents the single most powerful personal finance intervention by addressing fundamental psychological barriers, including procrastination, decision fatigue, and inconsistent follow-through. Through detailed implementation guidance, Sethi demonstrates how to create a comprehensive automation system, including direct deposit allocation, automatic bill payment, savings transfers, and investment contributions that implement the conscious spending plan without requiring constant attention or decision-making. He addresses specific automation elements, including timed transfers between accounts, automatic contribution increases, bill payment systems, and investment rebalancing services that collectively create a self-maintaining financial infrastructure. Sethi explores how proper automation transforms financial management from a constant series of willpower-based decisions to an occasional review of an otherwise self-maintaining system. He addresses common automation concerns, including loss of awareness about finances, appropriate override situations, and maintaining flexibility for changing life circumstances. Throughout this discussion, Sethi emphasizes that automation effectiveness comes from its compatibility with human psychology, recognizing that most people will not consistently implement even well-understood financial actions when they require regular attention and decision-making. This automation emphasis explains why Sethi prioritizes initially investing time in establishing robust systems over ongoing financial micromanagement, positioning automation as the critical bridge between knowing the right financial moves and consistently implementing them despite competing priorities and psychological limitations. The 85% solution: action over perfection. Sethi introduces the 85% solution principle, the idea that implementing an imperfect financial plan consistently is vastly superior to endlessly researching the theoretically optimal approach while taking no action. He challenges the common perfectionist tendency in personal finance that leaves many people paralyzed by information overload and fear of making mistakes, arguing that this paralysis represents a far greater risk than making reasonable decisions with incomplete information. Through contrasting examples of individuals who implemented basic investment plans early versus those who spent years researching optimal strategies before acting, Sethi demonstrates how time in the market typically outweighs marginal improvements in investment selection or timing. He provides specific guidance for identifying when additional research creates meaningful improvement versus when it represents procrastination, including decision frameworks that balance information gathering with implementation momentum. Sethi addresses common perfectionism triggers, including fear of regret, abundance of conflicting expert opinions, and status anxiety about financial sophistication. He introduces specific techniques for overcoming perfectionism, including implementation deadlines, designated decision days, and deliberately embracing good enough approaches with planned future refinement. Throughout this discussion, Sethi emphasizes that financial success typically comes not from making optimal decisions, but from avoiding catastrophic ones while maintaining consistent positive behaviors, an approach requiring decisive action with reasonable information rather than exhaustive analysis. This action orientation explains both the book's tactical focus on specific implementation steps and its emphasis on automation systems that, once established, function effectively even without ongoing optimization or adjustment. Compound growth, the mathematical foundation of wealth building. Sethi explores compound growth as the fundamental mathematical principle underlying long-term wealth building, demonstrating how seemingly small initial investments combined with reasonable return rates create exponential rather than linear growth when maintained over decades. Through specific calculations showing how $100 monthly investments at various rates of return compound over 10, 20, and 40-year periods, Sethi illustrates the dramatic impact of early investing, even with modest amounts, compared to larger investments started later. He addresses several key principles of compound growth: the disproportionate importance of time in the market versus timing the market, how early investing creates a compound interest head start that later investors struggle to overcome regardless of contribution size, and how seemingly small fee differences dramatically impact long-term results through compound drag effects. Sethi provides specific guidance for maximizing compound growth advantage, including automated investment systems that ensure consistent contributions, low-fee investment selections that minimize compound drag, and psychological techniques for maintaining long-term perspective despite market fluctuations. He addresses common misunderstandings about compound growth, including underestimation of exponential curves, present bias that discounts distant benefits, and failure to appreciate how early contributions dramatically outperform later ones, even when later income increases substantially. Throughout this discussion, Sethi emphasizes that compound growth creates the mathematical foundation for wealth building across income levels, explaining why the book prioritizes establishing consistent investment habits early, even with small amounts, over waiting for higher income or perfect investment knowledge before beginning. This compounding principle explains both the book's emphasis on starting immediately with whatever resources are available and its focus on low-cost index funds that maximize the percentage of returns feeding back into the compounding process. Investing made simple, low-cost index fund approach. Sethi presents a simplified investment approach centered on low-cost index funds, challenging the conventional financial industry narrative that successful investing requires extensive knowledge, active management, or professional guidance. He demonstrates how evidence consistently shows passive, diversified investing through index funds outperforms approximately 85% of actively managed investments over extended periods while requiring minimal expertise or ongoing attention. Sethi examines several advantages of index-based investing: dramatically lower fees that preserve more returns for compounding, automatic diversification that reduces individual company risk, tax efficiency through minimal trading activity, and psychological benefits from reduced monitoring requirements and decision points. He provides specific implementation guidance, including asset allocation frameworks based on age and risk tolerance, specific fund recommendations across different account types, rebalancing approaches that maintain appropriate allocations over time, and psychological techniques for maintaining consistent contributions despite market volatility. Sethi addresses common index investing concerns, including the appeal of individual stock selection, fear of average returns, and anxiety about missing specialized investment opportunities. Throughout this discussion, Sethi emphasizes that effective investing typically requires simplification rather than increasing complexity, focusing on consistent contributions to low-cost diversified vehicles rather than sophisticated selection or timing strategies. This simplified investing approach aligns with the book's broader emphasis on creating sustainable financial systems that generate strong results with minimal ongoing effort or expertise, making wealth building accessible to average individuals without specialized knowledge or extraordinary discipline. The 80-20 analysis focus on high-impact financial areas. Sethi introduces the 80-20 principle, Pareto principle, as a crucial lens for personal finance, arguing that approximately 80% of financial outcomes stem from just 20% of possible financial actions. This principle guides readers to focus their limited time and attention on high-leverage activities that create disproportionate results while intentionally neglecting lower-impact areas. Through specific analysis across various financial domains, Sethi identifies several high-impact areas deserving primary focus. Maintaining good credit, which affects interest rates across all borrowing. Establishing appropriate insurance coverage, which mitigates catastrophic financial risk. Consistently investing in low-cost, diversified funds, which creates compound growth. Automating financial systems, which ensures consistent implementation. And increasing income, which expands financial possibilities. Conversely, he identifies low-leverage activities that consume disproportionate attention despite limited impact. Daily expense tracking, following market news, frequent account monitoring, and obsessive comparison shopping for minor purchases. Sethi provides specific guidance for implementing 80-20 analysis, including exercises to identify personally relevant high-impact areas. Decision framework for distinguishing between consequential versus inconsequential financial choices, and time allocation recommendations across different financial activities. Throughout this discussion, Sethi emphasizes that financial effectiveness stems not from addressing every financial detail, but from ensuring excellent execution on a minority of actions that create majority of results. Focusing limited attention where it genuinely matters rather than spreading it evenly across all possible financial considerations. This 80-20 approach explains the book's deliberate emphasis on certain financial areas while intentionally minimizing others, challenging conventional financial advice that often treats all financial decisions as equally significant regardless of their actual impact on outcomes. Beyond frugality, increasing income as wealth-building strategy. Sethi challenges the frugality-dominated approach of conventional personal finance advice, arguing that while controlling expenses remains important, increasing income offers potentially unlimited upside compared to the inherently limited gains from cost-cutting. He demonstrates through mathematical examples how focusing exclusively on expense reduction creates diminishing returns and lifestyle restrictions, while income growth can expand financial possibilities without equivalent sacrifice. Sethi explores three primary income growth approaches: career optimization, systematically increasing salary through strategic job selection, negotiation, and advancement; freelance work, leveraging existing skills for additional income beyond primary employment; and entrepreneurship, creating scalable business assets that generate revenue without proportional time investment. For each approach, he provides specific implementation strategies, including salary negotiation scripts, freelance pricing models, and business development frameworks adapted for different personality types and risk tolerances. Sethi addresses common income growth barriers, including imposter syndrome, fear of negotiation, and misconceptions about required credentials or connections. He provides specific reframing techniques that transform income pursuit from seeming selfish or greedy to appropriately valuing one's contribution, while creating greater capacity for generosity and impact. Throughout this discussion, Sethi emphasizes that the most effective financial strategy typically combines thoughtful expense management with deliberate income growth rather than focusing exclusively on either variable, creating both efficiency in spending and expansion in earning capacity rather than optimizing only one dimension. This beyond frugality perspective distinguishes the book from conventional financial advice focused primarily on spending restriction, explaining Sethi's balanced approach that addresses both income and expenses rather than emphasizing only cost control. Money and relationships. Financial partnership approaches. Sethi explores the complex intersection of money and relationships, examining how financial values, habits, and systems can either strengthen partnerships or create significant conflict when not deliberately addressed. He challenges both the complete financial merger and completely separate financial approaches common in relationship advice, arguing instead for a nuanced system based on shared values, transparent communication, and appropriate structural mechanisms. Sethi presents a relationship financial framework that includes scheduled money discussions, jointly determined financial goals and priorities, individual discretionary spending allowances that prevent microjudgment, and regular financial date nights that transform money from conflict source to partnership opportunity. He addresses several relationship financial challenges, handling income disparities between partners, navigating different money backgrounds and inherited financial scripts, appropriate financial transparency timing during dating versus marriage, and creating financial systems that respect both individual autonomy and partnership responsibility. Sethi provides specific communication approaches, including financial values clarification exercises, constructive disagreement frameworks, and discussion questions that surface implicit financial assumptions before they create conflict. He addresses common failure patterns in relationship finances, including avoidance of money discussions, judgment about spending priorities, hidden accounts or expenditures, and power imbalances from income differences. Throughout this discussion, Sethi emphasizes that successful financial partnerships require both appropriate systems that reduce friction points and ongoing communication that addresses evolving financial values and priorities. This relationship perspective explains the book's balanced approach to joint finances that acknowledges both the partnership and individual aspects of money management rather than advocating either complete merging or separation of financial lives regardless of specific relationship dynamics and values. Conclusion: I Will Teach You to Be Rich provides a comprehensive yet accessible approach to personal finance that balances psychological insight with practical implementation. Through Sethi's 6-week program covering credit, banking, retirement accounts, spending allocation, automation, and investing, the book offers a systematic pathway for financial improvement regardless of starting point or previous money mistakes. The work's particular value lies in its psychology-based methodology that addresses the behavioral aspects of money management rather than merely the mathematical or informational dimensions, creating sustainable financial improvement through systems that work with human nature rather than against it. For readers overwhelmed by financial complexity or paralyzed by money anxiety, Sethi provides both the conceptual clarity to understand essential principles and the step-by-step guidance to implement them without requiring extraordinary discipline or expertise. By focusing on high-leverage actions, automation, and consistent implementation of imperfect but adequate approaches, the book presents personal finance as an achievable life skill rather than an overwhelming technical domain requiring perfection. This practical, actionable framework explains why I Will Teach You to Be Rich has remained relevant through economic cycles and technological changes. Its focus on fundamental principles and psychological realities creates financial effectiveness regardless of specific market conditions or available financial tools.